Hello. Today we will talk about the traditional Dragon Boat Festival, which is regarded as one of the most important traditional festivals in China, alongside the Mooncake Festival and the Qingming Festival. Its date is based on the lunar calendar, which is 5th of May in the lunar calendar. Usually it is in the middle June in our Gregorian calendar. This year the date falls on the 14th of June, which is next Monday. This festival in Chinese is called Duanwu. Duan means a very middle, the center, and Wu means the noon, the middle time of the day. So the word Duanwu means the very center, the very middle. We know that the ancient Chinese saw special importance in odd numbers, that is 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. They believe they belong to the heaven. And 5 is the very middle of these 5 numbers. So the date, the 5th of May, which is the fifth day of the 5th month, is even more special. And that's why they call it Duanwu. This date is often also called Duanyang. Yang here means the sun, or representing one of the elements of the yin-yang philosophy. Just as a side note, in fact, in China, all dates which have the same odd numbers of day and month is seen as important, and is traditionally a festival. This is all in the lunar calendar. For example, the 1st of Jan is the New Year's Day, the Spring Festival, and the 3rd of March now is no longer celebrated, but used to be very popular when people went for an outing and fun, especially in the Tang Dynasty. And the 5th of May is the Duanwujie, as we know, the Dragon Boat Festival. And the 7th of July is the Chinese Valentine's Day, and 9th of September is the Chongyang Festival. The exact origin of Duanwujie is hard to find out for sure. Most likely it was a tradition gradually formed since the very ancient days, thousands of years ago, and later more formalized by people. At the very beginning, it was possibly a day near mid-year to make sacrifices and worship gods and ancestors, to pray for a good harvest, good health, and to drive away diseases and evils. That's why we have the customs of hanging out certain medicinal herbal plant on this day, chengpu or aiye, in front of our houses. The custom of boat racing, in particular, boats decorated with the head of dragon, also came from this idea. Our ancient people were worshipping dragons, deities in the river, for return of good harvest and good fortune. Because this dragon boat racing is visually most outstanding among all activities people do on the day, and is easiest to understand and relate to, we now usually translate Duanwujie as Dragon Boat Festival in English. Once these customs and activities became established, and people followed them widely, more elements and stories would be added to it, romanticizing it and enriching the significance of this day. Of them all, the story of Qu Yuan was the most famous and well known, and we now have almost inextricably linked Duanwujie with him. Qu Yuan is regarded one of the greatest poets of all time in China, and the very first big name in the history of poetry in China. He was living towards the end of the Warring States period of China, from 340 BC to 278 BC, roughly a few decades after Alexander the Great. He was a high officer in the court of one of the states, Chu, who saw the intention of the powerful Qing state trying to annex it. He was worried and often advised his king, who turned a blind eye to him. What's worse, there were other evil counselors around the king who badmouthed him, and the king believed them that Qu Yuan was not an honest nobleman and banished him. Qu Yuan wrote many poems to express his anger, huge disappointment, and despair. He eventually heard of the news that his country was taken by the Qing after all, and was no more in existence. Totally despairing, he carried a big rock with him and jumped into a river and died. Local people admired him greatly and had a lot of sympathy for him. Fearing that his body would be eaten up by the fish in the river, they made a lot of dumplings, cooked meat wrapped in rice, and threw them into the river for fish to eat and to commemorate Qu Yuan. This dumpling is called zongzi, and eating zongzi is now the single most important custom when we celebrate this day. It's super delicious snack with many different flavors, wrapped in fresh green leaves of certain plant. You usually can only find zongzi during the month of Duanwujie, which makes this food even more special. A few more words about Qu Yuan's poems. Because he lived more than 2,000 years ago, the language and words that he used in his poems are often very difficult for us modern readers. His most important contribution is that, following the ancient Chinese poetry tradition, he created a new style full of metaphors and allegories, long length, line after line, in expressing his emotions, and with rich imaginations and exaggerations, totally romantic in nature. It's impossible to give a full example here, but I have picked a short excerpt to give you some flavor. This is from his poem, 涉江, which means to cross the river. The excerpt is from the beginning of the poem. In this excerpt, Qu Yuan talked about his huge ambition and extreme pride of himself, all hidden in a fascinating and glamorous language. 余又好此祈福兮，年既老而不衰。待长甲之陆离兮，管窃云之崔嵬。披明月兮，佩宝鹿。视混浊而莫于知兮，无方高驰而不顾。驾轻裘兮，参白痴，无与重华游兮遥之浦。登昆仑兮，食玉英。与天地兮比寿，与日月兮同光。哀难移之莫无之兮，但于济乎江乡。That's all. Thank you.